everybody, this is Craig Tanner for the Mindful Eye and the Daily Critique. This is another question-based critique today. The image was submitted by Gwen, who is a beginning photographer from the UK. Gwen shot this image with a Canon 1D Mark III, 400mm lens, ISO 2000 f2.8 and 1/800th of a second. And her backstory, Gwen says this image was taken at a diving competition in Sheffield, England. And she says that the main subject of her picture is the dramatic rim lighting and the diver. Those two things combined, the diver in this really beautiful rim light. She says there was a big bank of lights that was creating that quality of light, and it's really what she was going for in a whole series of shots that she took. She has a couple of different questions. Gwen says, what about a square crop? She thought that might be better. How can I minimize the structures in the background? How can I get rid of the color cast? But most of all, how can I make the most the rim light effects? So let's get into it. First, just talking about the main subject. Really well seen here. Really nice job of shooting at a shallow depth of field, which is really helping to separate Gwen's main subject from the background. So I'm really enjoying that. Quality of light here is absolutely amazing. This is a great image to look at to really get your mind around how powerful dimensional lighting is, and also how powerful the idea of the accent or the kicker light effect can be. I'm recording a series of videos on basic composition, and one of the videos is all about light, types of light and qualities of light, and I talk quite a bit in that video about how adding dimensional light, having all three types of light, a main or key light, the light that drives shadows, having fill light, and then having kicker light effects like this, just how exciting that can be. So I'm really enjoying Gwen's main subject here. Let's go through the questions one at a time. Let's talk about the square crop. I can definitely see thinking about a square crop with the X here, with the diver being in the middle. You might look at this image and think, you know what, let's crop up from the bottom. And it's really sort of push this more towards a framing device that is symmetrical, like the diver. But then once I do that, for me, it doesn't work. And the reason being, it just has to do with negative space and the implication of energy, and also the idea of proportion. When I crop this, although it might be more congruent with centering and the X back there, then it starts to feel cramped, and the bracing on the top actually starts to distract me, and it starts to feel really heavy. One of the things that happens in this crop is the crop just leaves us with the X, and then something happens in terms of how the diver isn't quite lined up with this. It's a near tangency but not, and that really starts to draw my mind's eye. When I move back to the original crop and this other brace comes in, then I don't think about the relationship between the diver and the braces as much, and I have this negative space that all the energy of the diver can move into. And one very powerful concept, you don't always have to do it this way, but when you have a very high value subject, it can be tempting to come in and get very, very close. But when you have a high value subject like the diver, and all the energy that's implied by this body language and the gesture and just the idea of floating through the air, and then the rim lighting, a lot of times it works better to include a lot more environment around it, and a lot of times environment that is sort of featureless. That actually ends up lending more weight a lot of times to a subject like this than coming in and getting very, very close. So this is one that I would not crop at all. Let's look at the other questions. How can I minimize the structures in the background? They've been minimized by the shallow depth of field, and I don't think that they need to be minimized so much as there just needs to be more separation, and the color cast and getting rid of that and doing some other color things is going to help with that. So we'll sort of get to that when we're talking about the color cast. And so let me show you the things that I would do in Photoshop to deal with getting a little bit more separation in the background, getting rid of the color cast, and making more of the rim lighting. This isn't a digital darkroom video today, so I'm just going to turn the layers on. You can see the effect of these things. You want to copy your background so that all the changes in Photoshop will be available to you. I just use curves and the middle dropper here to come in and click somewhere in the background that could be gray to get rid of all of this warmth. And so that's what I did right here on this layer. And you immediately get a sense of more separation. So it's a pretty good start, just getting rid of all the red. Now there's more of a feeling of the warm on the diver and much less of it in the background. Came in and I did a levels adjustment and applied it locally. So I just pulled on both ends of the levels adjustment, just reset my white and black point and overdid it, and then filled the mask here with black. Let me option click on the mask, and then came in and painted in a very specific way. You can see the outline of the diver there, and then I painted in some places where there are the water droplets. Just bring up the contrast and the rim lighting that is already there. There's before and there is after. Then I came in and I just darkened overall. So one of the things that we can do if we want to exaggerate backlighting or side lighting effects is just go for an overall darker exposure, because so much of the time specularity is a blowout. It's already at a point where there's no detail, so we're not going to be able to darken that. So if we darken everything else, then those blowouts or those specular highlights, the reflection of the light source on our subject, is now going to appear very bright because the relative sort of middle exposure is much darker. That's all I did here. You can see there's no change to the mask. I just made the image dramatically darker by at least a couple of stops. You can see the histogram moving up there. Remember, the sort of a dynamic range now with digital capture of 7 to 8 stops. So it's a pretty big move across the totality of 7 or 8 stops. So this is probably 2 or 3 stops darker. And how did I do it? I just used the target adjustment tool and click down in here and pull straight down on the curve. I didn't want to increase the contrast. I just wanted to sort of find out what's the average value of the negative space in the background, and then just darken straight down from there. That's what I did on that layer right there. That makes a huge difference. Now the rim lighting, combining these two moves right here, is really coming forward. From here I darkened more, and I tried to sort of get a feeling of, in some respects, of even darkness all the way around in the background. And you can really see in the head, and sorry about the background noise if you can hear that. It's just where I'm recording today. I'm right by a really busy road in the room where I have my computer, and maybe it's not that loud. Maybe I'm the only one that's being bothered. Okay, after that change I came in and made a color balance change, and this one is pretty subtle. And it's so subtle that I don't even know what I did there. That's why you want to name your layers, but I'm going to keep going. Let me option click on the mask and I'll be able to tell you. Yeah, I added some red to those I-beams actually. I just like the idea of playing the red off of the diver off of the structure in the background. Then I came in and I added a little bit more warm to the diver to make the diver come forward. There's before and there is after. And then I came in and I added a little bit more blue to the background in the negative space areas in between the beams. And I'm doing that so that the beams are sort of rhyming from a color standpoint, the flesh tone of the diver, and then the negative space in the middle is rhyming the diver's suit. And in a lot of respects, those things are just sort of personal color things that I'm doing. I really like graphic color, and I like to play around with complementary color. But I think that you can also see that those moves, as slight as they were, are continuing to push the idea of color depth. So here's where we started, and here is where we ended up. Fantastic shot from Gwen. I really enjoy the lighting, really enjoy the moment. I love the shallow depth of field, like the framing here. Love the rhythms. You know, I haven't talked about that here, but just the body language and the gesture here in the dive and how that's playing off of the bracing in the background. Really neat shot from Gwen. I want to say a big thank you to her. I want to say a big thank you to you for being here. Hope to see you again very soon on the Mindful Eye and the Daily Critique.